federal level to find funding for those projects. And I'm really concerned about going to the citizens of the town asking for more money for tax and spend projects that we keep on doing. My question is to everybody else, when is it enough? Thank you.
Great. Those are great questions, and I do thank you folks for that. In the interest of time, we are going to the public next for questions. I think we're probably not going to have much more time than for about 4 questions. So could I just have a show of hands? Who would be asking questions out here? 1, 2, 3. Okay, well, we won't have to draw straws if that's the case. Otherwise, we would have to do that. So you guys can sit tight for a while. And I would invite the public to come up to the microphone here and ask your question. This would be a question that would be directed to everybody, so don't zing in on just one particular person, if you would. Hi, too. Mr. Dolan.
Good morning. Thank you for putting yourself out there and for offering to serve the community. It's a big responsibility, and for those who haven't done it, it's a lot of time if you get elected. My question is, well, first, if we can all stipulate that we're all for public safety, we're all for lower taxes, we're all for doing good stuff. If we can stipulate that, then get on to the specific. If you believe that taxes are too high and you're willing to roll back services which drive taxes, can you offer 1 or 2 or even 3 specific services that you would roll back to save tax money?
Right, and let's start with Mr. Carrier on this one, okay?
Why don't we? Thank you.
Okay. No time to think.
Well, if I had to make a quick decision here, I would say solid waste, $2 million. I don't believe Londonderry's tax rate is too high. Can we do a better job at stabilizing and minimizing the tax impact relative to services? Absolutely. But if you compare Londonderry's tax rate with southern New Hampshire, Londonderry is comparable, if not less, than surrounding communities, and specifically Derry. The services that Londonderry provides far outweigh what the other communities provide. So I don't believe our tax rate is out of line with surrounding communities. I do, however, think that we can do a better job of managing our financial services.
Mr. DeMarco.
Thank you. Great question. Unfortunately, I don't think I can answer it without researching the information. I'm just not the type of person who's going to go in and say, oh, I'm going to cut this, this, and this. But what I think would be a good exercise to do would be to, list town services, and then in my mind prioritize them, and I've already said, I'm going to put public safety up at the top of that list. And then we could look at, okay, these are lower priority items that maybe we could cut back on or eliminate. It's funny Mike mentioned solid waste, because I had actually thought about that, and when I looked at using the excellent tool that the Budget Committee provided on the website, I was able to see exactly how much I pay a year for garbage. And I went and pulled my solid waste bills from when I lived in Pennsylvania, and I was paying $30 a quarter back in 1992, and I'm paying $160 a year now. So when I do the math, I'm actually about the same. So one of my only concerns with that is that I'm paying for waste removal now through property taxes, which I then could deduct on my federal taxes. If I have to pay for garbage removal by myself, all of a sudden that doesn't happen anymore. It's pennies, but I know, but it's just kind of the principle of the thing. But that, be creative, look through that list, and then we could determine and then see what the impacts are and if we could live with that as a community or not.
All right. Mr. O'Keefe.
Good question, Tom. It's going to keep us hopping up here. As I had offered earlier, combining department services would be an avenue I would look to try to do. You've got the town and the school, and you try to look to utilize both and maybe combine services, and maybe you wouldn't need as many employees. I think that would be one area to look, but that's just one thing that comes to mind. I'm not really for cutting the trash service. I kind of agree with Paul. I think it's a great service that I don't have to sit in a line at the dump dropping trash off. It's just not worth it to me. So I'd like to keep that around.
To my point.
But that's pretty much all I have right now.
All right. Mr. Vermillion?
Another excellent question. As a new resident here in Londonderry, I've only been here 5 years. It's really hard to pinpoint what services you can actually live without. But I think as for a budgetary restraint, maybe an idea of a freeze on all budgetary spending to see where you stand and then go from there. And I think that ultimate decision about what services to cut would be, again, a decision of the town. I think they should vote on which ones they should, if any, give up or reduce.
Thank you. And Mr. Brown?
You know, I kind of knew Tom was going to ask this question, serving on the Budget Committee with Tom. And it is an excellent question, and again, it kind of hits to the core, one of the core responsibilities of the council. So, you know, services, picking out 2 to 3 services is one thing, and I can speak to that, but I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, that 85% of what drives our budget is related to personnel costs, and these are the people that provide those services. So there is a direct correlation, one to the other, okay? So I would tend to want to look at the services that drive the highest personnel-related costs, and which ones are also performed on both sides of the tax bill, that is the town and the school side. I mean, we all know that we're a separate government and we're running for the council, but everyone here gets one tax bill that's reflective of both the town and the school. And that's all that matters to most folks is, hey, this number is big and it's from the town of Londonderry. The school's part of that. So I think as a counselor, I would look at the areas where the services are being provided that have the highest personnel costs. I would look at the services that potentially are duplicative on both the town and the school side. I think everything is on the table, everything. There are no sacred cows. Public safety notwithstanding, you don't make foolish moves in that area, but you certainly look at it. It doesn't mean you don't look at it, you do. I also think there are costs that are driven by policies. As a former counselor, I know that I supported policies that have a service cost with a person associated with it. There's nothing wrong with having the council review policies related to services and see if there may be a change needed, okay? There are also tough decisions that can and should be reviewed and possibly made. I mean, hours of operation. We have a town that's open from X to X. There's nothing wrong with the council reviewing whether we might want to consider opening a half hour later or closing half hour earlier, and benchmarking whether there is a service impact. When it comes to services, we hear a lot about, you know, what services is the town willing to give up? I'm willing to try it. We're long overdue with talking about it. Let's give it a shot, change some services, and see what the community says. I have a feeling most of the community won't skip a beat. So I'm willing to look at everything.
All right. And do we have another question from the audience?
Richard Blinsky, and I'm going to get off the tax things for a little bit. As we know, there's a lot of voter apathy in this town, and having lived here for 23 years, I know a lot of the reasons why. A lot of it is the way they're treated when they deal with the town. As an example, what I'm going to use, and many of you probably know about it, this will involve the ZBA, Planning Board, Code Enforcement, and a couple other departments in the town. We have a problem up on Hall Road of a salvage yard. It's a problem that's been there for 23 years that I've been in town. Recently, the ZBA gave a variance for them to build in the wetlands in the Conservation Overlay District. Planning Board approved an expansion of the building from 400 square feet that's on the tax card to 4,000 square feet. I have brought in court orders. I have brought in the zoning book. I have pointed out where the town zoning ordinances, court orders have been violated, and it's all being ignored. And I want to know what you would do on the council to straighten this out, because this has been an ongoing problem. And not to pick on anyone in particular,
But after reading Paul's blurb in the
you can pick on me.
newspaper, he was one of the people